Welcome to Innergetics with Kim and Veronica, where we invite you to nourish the energy of your inner why, your inner healing, magic, prosperity, your curiosity, clarity, playfulness. Welcome home. All right, and welcome everyone. Welcome to our next episode of the Innergetics podcast. I am Veronica, and I'm here with my beautiful partner, Kim. Hello, Kim.
Hello, Miss Veronica.
And we're
And
so
Miss Cassie.
thrilled to share that we have our beautiful guest here, Ms. Cassie Howard. Hi, Cassie. I'm going to girl fan a little bit on you because I have been a follower. I've been a client of yours for a few years. So I'm just so grateful to you for everything that you do. Of course, inspired by your success, but more than that, I'm just really inspired by the woman that you are, what you've created, and all the leadership that you bring. Like, I can't even imagine what happens behind the scenes. So I'll just give a quick intro for our listeners here. Cassie Howard is an online business mentor for women. She has generated over 8 figures cash in just a few short years. And she's really especially known for her savvy sales skills and her ability to make business simple, make it fun, and make it sustainable. The cool thing about Cassie is that her approach to business and money is really unique, and it it's a draw for women who really want to build a business on their own terms. So a business of their dreams, but on their own terms. And Cassie she loves breaking the rules, which I know Kim and I really love that about her. And she especially loves doing what others tell her she can't do. So you're like, okay, you tell me you can't do it, I'll show you.
My favorite.
So she's a huge proponent of success on your terms, and she works with clients who have just broken glass ceilings and just created unbelievable results in their business as it relates to money. Her programs are all about work ethic, staying power, big bold moves, long focus game, and she really teaches programs and mentors women on the topics that have really worked for her in both money and success and business. So thank you, Cassie, for spending the time with us and with our listeners. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel honored.
Yeah. And so, Cassie, we our topic here, our podcast is Innergetics. So Kim and I have been in the inner game, if you will, for decades and decades. Kim since the 90s, me for the last, say, 25 years. We're all about the inner game. We're about the energetics. We're about the mindset. We're about the emotions. And I know your focus is really a lot on strategy, but there's also that inner component that is huge for what you've created. And so it's really just an open dialogue here. Some of the topics that I'm curious about, but happy to go wherever you'd like, is, when we think about the inner game, some of the things that you have navigated as it relates to money and as it relates to success. I'm curious about things like, what are the things that you that you overcame in terms of challenges early on versus what you're navigating now? What's that difference? Are there things that are very different for you where you look back and you're like, I can't even believe that was an emotional challenge or a mindset challenge? Or are there things that are the same, that it's just like, even though it's been 0 to 8 figures, you're still navigating some of the inner environment the same way that you have in the past. So anything on that line would be wonderful to talk about.
Yeah, I actually think it's a bit of both. Like, there are some things that are the same. Like, I think the same, I feel the same, I act the same, I believe the same, but a lot has changed. And I think one of the biggest things for me, especially as it pertains to money, is this belief that I had to do something that I didn't want to do to make money. Like, a lot of us grow up with this belief that rich people are bad, or rich people are selfish or greedy, or they definitely did something sketchy to make all their money. And like, that was always my mindset, because that's what I was taught, and that's what I had been told from so many people. So I always believed that I would be rich. But then it was this weird feeling of, well, I know I'm going to be rich, but I don't want to be a bad person, and rich people are bad, and all of these things. So I think that prevented me from creating wealth for a long time, because I had to really work through the resistance that I didn't even realize was there, but was definitely there, and really holding me back from accelerating faster. And once I let go of this belief that rich people were bad, or if you have money, it means all these bad things about you, which really happened when I put myself around wealthy people and realized, oh, they're actually the opposite of what I always believed they were, then that's when the floodgates really opened for me, because I changed my belief to rich people are good people. Rich people do good things with money. Well, now I definitely want to be rich. And so it just, the floodgates opened from there.
I love that. And, Kim and I, we work with clients one-on-one and we facilitate programs, and we still, still encounter a lot of people that have that money struggle. And so in all the women that you work with, is there a common theme that you see? I mean, for sure, definitely, can agree and align with that story of rich people being bad and money being evil. And are there other like really common themes that you see for that women that you work with, and maybe even yourself, had to overcome emotionally or energetically or from a mindset perspective, as it relates to money and kind of getting out of the struggle into the overflow?
Yeah, there's two that popped into my head right away. So one is that making a lot of money means I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to put in more time. And knowing that I always wanted to have this life of freedom and being able to do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted, the thought of I have to constantly work my butt off to make the kind of money that I want, they didn't align. Like, that does not equal freedom. So I had to work through that. And this is a big one for a lot of my clients as well, is they think that more money equals more responsibility. It equals more to-dos. It equals, I have to show up and do more than I'm already doing. And a lot of the time they're already doing a lot. So the thought of doing even more than that is just, it's too much. And so a lot of them just stay where they're at, because they're like, it's way more comfortable here than having to stretch myself with this belief that I'm going to have to work harder, I'm going to have to do more, I'm going to have all these extra expectations. So that's a really big one. And then what was the other one? Oh, and then the other one was actually surrounding yourself with wealth. So this was probably the first thing I would say that I did that helped me to really tap into the frequency of wealth, was to put myself around wealthy people. So I couldn't afford hiring a mentor who made lots of money. I couldn't even afford being in masterminds, and I couldn't even afford being in like $1,000 programs. So the next best thing for me was to go where I knew wealthy people would spend time, and not even engage with them, but just be near them. And so my very first thing was I went to the Four Seasons in Toronto, and I would go to the restaurant at lunchtime on like a Tuesday. And I know I did this by accident one time. A friend of mine's like, let's just go there and be in the vibes. And we did it. It was like Tuesday afternoon. And I realized it was all these like bankers and like guys from the like financial district. And I was like, let's just eavesdrop. Let's just hear what they're talking about. And all they were talking about was money, how much money they were making, how much money they were investing, how much money they were spending, all these like stock things that I don't understand, but all of this money talk. And I was like, oh, now that it kind of makes me think of what's possible for me. I can look into this, I can look into that, I can try this. So I started to go once a month, because that's all I could afford, eating there once a month, on like a Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon. They were always there, and I would just eavesdrop. I would go by myself, I would go with friends, and I would just eavesdrop. And it was just all these conversations about not even millions of dollars, but tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars were like what these people were managing and handling and investing. And it put me in that frequency of wealth. And the next thing I knew, I was able to afford to stay in a tiny little room in the Four Seasons. So I'd go there for lunch, and then I'd go up to my room and I would just be in the vibes. And I just started to do that more and more and more, and go to as many places as I could. And then once I started to make more money, I started to invest in like programs, masterminds, smaller ones, bigger ones, and growing from that point.
And now you're always in the presidential suite. I love seeing your pictures from
My favorite. It's my favorite.
Kim,
You know what? Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So Cassie, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And I'm curious, like as you were sitting in that restaurant for lunch and submerged in the energy and soaking in the energy of people who have lots and are chatting about that. I'm thinking that for me, for sure, I would have even more awareness of my own judgments around what they're talking about. That's all they care about. And so for me, I'm like, oh, that would just give me more to work on for myself, right? And so did that come up for you, like sitting there, or you were just more soaking in the energy of who they were being? Because yeah, for me, I think it would definitely bring me into more awareness of what judgments I have about people with money as well, which are mine. That would be my stuff, right? My own inner environment, if you will. And so I love that. I love that. It'd be a good place
Yeah.
to do that. To be able to become more aware. You want to know
Yeah.
what your judgments are around money? Go hang out with them.
Exactly.
You think you don't
Exactly.
have judgments about money? Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's put you in this room.
Yeah, 100%. I even found that I didn't judge them, which actually kind of surprises me because I judged wealthy people, but I didn't judge them. It more inspired me. But what I did notice is that I judged myself. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you should be further along. You should know this stuff more. You should have been doing this ages ago." Like I did judge myself more. So, yeah, you're right. It did bring up that awareness too.
Yeah. 100%. That's yeah, because I can be in some really higher, masterminds or whatever you call them and that kind of stuff. And I do that. I'm like, oh my God, like I've been doing this since the 90s and they've been doing it for 8 years and they're like in the multi-millions. And I'm like, what's
Yeah.
wrong with me? Yeah,
That's
it
why I
does
love
that.
masterminds though, is that you always are able to see what your blind spots are. Like I loved, and I know some people don't agree with this, but I really love it when I'm triggered by someone. I love it when someone pisses me off or they say something that makes me like angry or whatever, because it's like, oh, there's something there for me to look at. There's something for me to clean up. There's something for me to heal. There's something deeper. And when I look at those things and I clean those things up and I do the healing, my life gets better. So it's always a blessing, even though it's annoying in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all know that trigger wouldn't get triggered if the trigger isn't there. And so anything we can be appreciative of the person who triggered it, right? And it's not
Yeah.
them. It's if it pisses me off, that's mine. And so yeah, so definitely thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, Cassie, it was another topic I was hoping that we could maybe talk a little bit about. And I'm going by memory here, so I may be, so just correct me if I'm misspeaking in any way, but I remember you at one point, probably maybe a couple of years ago, talking online about how as you started to have more money and more success in your business, there were people in your life, I don't know if it's friends or family or acquaintances, but that started to judge you for that, and started to maybe not want to be around you. And so again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember you saying something about people saying, all she cares about is money, all she cares about is business, because that's what your business is. So of course, that's what you're going to talk about. But then their judgments came in. And so I'm curious about how, and again, correct me where I'm wrong there, but I'm curious about your inner navigation of that judgment, both with people that are close to you or you thought were close friends or family, but
Mm,
also I loved your reel recently where you were, sleeping in bed and you were like, how do you sleep
No,
at night when everyone hates you? And you're like, well, I close my eyes and sleep
peacefully.
peacefully. And yeah, I love that. And so it's like, well, I can tell you that I'm not there. Like I think about if I were to be more online, the judgment, I feel like it would really be tough for me to navigate that. So if you could share anything around that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'll first say it took me a long time to get here where I'm not really fazed by what other people think of me. I'm not going to say it doesn't bother me at all because obviously I'm human and I don't like it when people don't like me. I don't like it when they get upset with me, but I realize that it's not my problem. If somebody doesn't like me or somebody doesn't agree with me or somebody thinks something about me that is or isn't true, like it's none of my business. So that's for them. And with the family and friends, it was actually mostly family, like extended family. And the biggest thing was they were so, I realize this in hindsight, but they were so comfortable being comfortable. They actually had no desire to grow. They had no desire to have a life that was better. They just liked to complain. And I know this because this was like my mom's side of the family, and my mom told me these things. She's like, they just complain all the time. That's their favorite thing to do. So seeing somebody who would not participate in the complaining. They also gossiped a lot. And anytime they would gossip, I would leave the room. If they were complaining, I would leave the room. And so they saw it as like, oh, she's too good for us. And I guess part of me was like, I don't feel like I'm too good for them, but I feel like I'm too good for these conversations. And I just don't want to be a part of them. And they didn't like that. And I had to be sad for a minute, because it's like, this is my family. My family should want to see me do well, I would imagine. But the fact that they didn't was, really heartbreaking. And I had to process that. But then I realized, once I kind of eliminated contact with them, in a sense, my life got so much better. And I noticed afterwards, I was like, oh, this is because I was holding on to this belief that everyone needs to accept me, and especially my family needs to accept me, and they need to celebrate me, and they need to be happy for me, not realizing that everyone is on their own journey, and they're on their own journey. And whether they want to stay where they're at on their journey, or they want to grow on their journey, I have to continue to do what's best for me. And what's best for me is the continual growth. So if that means that they don't want to be in my life, or they don't want to talk to me anymore, then they don't have to, even though it's sad. And some of them, they just didn't want to talk about money, which is fine. I don't have to talk about money all the time. And so the relationship is still there. We just have certain boundaries, and that works for us.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a lot of strength.
Yeah. And I find that it's also something that you can heal it, but you also may never heal it. It might just be something that's there, and you just have to live with it.
Peace with it.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. But the longer that you let it control your emotions and control your actions, it's ultimately controlling your life. And I just don't want to give anyone that kind of power over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, you know what? My family, I grew up in a small town in Nova Scotia, and my family was known as one of the wealthier families. And so same thing, like except for as a teenager, I didn't have the tools to know how to be judged, right? And so I got to a place where I didn't even want to tell people my last name, because as soon as I told them my last name, they would have this thing, oh, she's that rich kid, which my father had money. I didn't. I didn't have any more money in my pocket than they did. But yeah, that thing of trying to, or wanting to belong, and yet not be wanting to be part of those conversations. I get that 100%. And yeah, so now I'm 65. That was when I was a teenager. And, I still see it, but it doesn't suck me in like it used to. It doesn't, and I am human. And so, yeah, of course I go out. However, I don't twist myself upside down to try to fit in or try to belong. And I'm certainly not going to engage in the conversations in order to do so, right? I can allow them to be where they're at. Doesn't mean I have to join it, right? So yeah, same kind of thing. But yeah, all these years later, I witness it more than I did then. Right? Back then, I tried to avoid it and hide from it and don't tell anyone who I am, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough. So changing topics a little bit, Cassie, like one of the things that I believe, and Kim and I are huge proponents that what I believe is not what anybody else should believe. And so we really, respect everyone's unique and individual journey. But something that I've come to believe over the last, couple of decades is that I really appreciate the desires for things that I desire in life. So whether it's money or success or love or whatnot, I appreciate those desires because I believe that they're pulling me into my greatness, right? And so the journey from where I'm at to, where that point is maybe not easy because of all of the inner things that I have to navigate, but the appreciation for that desire of, okay, at least it's bringing me into my greatness. It's a path to cultivating my greatness. And when you are now achieved everything that you've achieved and you're at still such a young age, What does that look like for you? So you've hit the 8 figures and you've got this amazing business, and you've achieved so many of the things that you, I assume, desired at one point in time. So like, what's next? What's that next level of desire for you? And do you see it similar in that it's a path to your greatness?
100%. And I also realize that I don't even know half the stuff that I want yet. I feel like things are placed in front of me of like, oh, there's also this option. That looks good. Let's go that way. Like I've noticed that for a lot of the things that I have actually experienced over my lifetime is half of them I wanted and I worked for them. And the other half were surprises. Like I didn't even realize I wanted that until I had it. So I'm always open to that. And I really truly believe that everything that is placed in front of me is meant for me. There's something about it it's meant for me. And so I trust that and I walk towards that, but I don't have, like, some people have very specific goals where they're like, this is where I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. For me, I don't even know where I want to be next year. All I know is I want to be a better version of myself every day. And so that's what I work on. I have things like my animal sanctuary that I want to have, like, all across Canada, different animal sanctuaries. I have the $100 million milestone that I'm excited to one day cross, whenever that is. Like, I have big things like that, but there's no like deadline. I don't have a deadline on it. There's no, it has to be by this date or it has to happen in this way. It's just an excitement and an anticipation for when it one day happens, plus all the other fun surprises that I know are going to pop up along the way. I get excited for those too.
I love that. Thank you. Does it seem like everything always works out for you?
No,
As an
definitely
outsider,
not.
I think as a
No.
as an outsider, right? Like we have these ideas of what the type of success you've achieved, what that would feel like or look like, right? So it's like, oh, everything always works out for her. Why isn't it working out for me, right? So it's helpful, I think, to just relate to the humanness of what's behind that success. Is there's a human that is Cassie, where maybe things don't always work out, and there's different challenges.
Yeah, I think people need to realize that it's not always easy. That's one of the biggest frustrations that I get, is when people say to me, "Oh, it's so easy. Oh, it must have been so easy for you." Everything I've accomplished, every single thing that I've accomplished in my life was hard. Everything was hard. And there were many times I wanted to quit. There were many times where I was like, is this even worth it? And there were many times when I questioned myself, like, why am I even doing this? But then once I accomplished whatever it was, I was like, oh, that's why. Like, it always made sense afterwards. But you have to be strong and you have to be committed and you have to be willing to pivot, because sometimes things don't happen the way that you expect them to. You have to be willing to make changes. And for me, what made it so much easier was to just learn to love the journey as opposed to the destination only. Just enjoy the journey, and to not even really have a destination, which is kind of how I live my life. It's like, there is no destination. I'm just having a good time.
Thanks. You know what? I think that's a really awesome piece right there. Right? Is I don't know where I even want to be in 5 years or a year from now or next week.
It's true.
Well, I know what the plan looks like for next week, right? And that
But the plan
may
can
happen.
change anytime.
Exactly. That it may happen and it may not happen. And so when it doesn't happen, I can go into, that old thing of, oh my God, I suck, nothing goes my way. Or I can look at it and go, it didn't turn out the way I thought it might. Perhaps I was thinking too small, right? Maybe there's something here I never even thought of, and so just kind of surrendering to that, and not in surrendering in the way of giving up. That those white flag days are done, but surrendering in a way of, okay, so it didn't work out the way I hoped. Now what? Now what? Hey, universe, God, whatever. Now what? And like you said, letting the destination be a journey, because I don't know what it's going to look like when I get there, right?
So I
I
might
don't
as
know
well
what I'm
enjoy
going to
it on the
dream.
way there.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm going to dream about when I go to sleep tonight. Do you guys? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be a fun experience.
Exactly. And so, Cassie, one of the things I really admire about you is how spontaneously creative you are, right? You're always like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it seems like, again, as an outsider, as a, as somebody who's watching from the outside, that you are very, quick to take action on ideas that come to you and just kind of like test things out. But it also seems like you stick to things as well, right? So, I think you said that you have this target now for podcasts this year, and it's not a small target, right? Like, but it's like,
Yeah.
so can you talk a little bit about that creative process for you in terms of, okay, you get these hits or these downloads. I don't know the terminology you would use, these ideas. Do you believe that there's an interaction with an unseen force, whether that's, God, the universe, life, Mother Nature? Is that language that relates to you? Is there some kind of conversation or dialogue happening, even if it's just energetically? And then what does that process look like for you? You just get hits, and then do you check in to see if it feels right, or you just go for things and see what lands?
This is always hard for me to explain because the way that things come through for me is it's more I get this I get full body tingles. Like that's what it starts with, and I'm like, what is this? And then it's like the idea that somebody just plops it into my head. It's like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. And then I have to move on it immediately. I'm talking within like 5 minutes. If I don't do something within 5 minutes, it's gone. And so I'm always taking action based on that feeling. And I don't get the whole full body tingles feeling that often. But when I get it, I immediately move on it. So there's no like conversation with anyone, anything. There's no thinking about it. There's no like, okay, now how do I do this in the most strategic way? It's just I have to do something. And then I do the strategy, of course, but I have to do something first. So if it's say like an offer idea, I'm going to put out a teaser. So even if I don't have a payment link yet, I'll put out a little teaser of I was thinking about doing a 5-day challenge on XYZ. Would you be in? Something like that. So it's out there. I've taken action. And then from that point, I can start doing all the practical, logistical things behind the scenes. I can start strategizing, but I have to at least move on it. And it all starts from that full body tingle. I'll also get it sometimes in conversation. So if I'm having a conversation with my own mentor or with a private client and they say something, I'm like, ooh, that would be a good post. Ooh, that would be a good, podcast, not podcast, reel, or something that I can share in Millionaire Musings. Like, ooh, that's a good one. And obviously, once we're done talking, then I will immediately go and do the thing.
That's interesting. And has that always been your process, or is that something you cultivated at a certain point in time?
That's always been how I've done it. Everything.
And would you say that's one of your keys to success?
I think, yeah, one of my keys to success is fast action. Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
because I think most people they slow themselves down by overthinking. And sometimes they'll have really great ideas, but then they overthink it to the point where it's like the idea is no longer exciting. And then they don't move on it at all when it could have been something great.
Right. And so, am I accurate in saying that you get the hit, you don't know maybe all the details or what it looks like, but you just start the action immediately, and then the details kind of flush themselves out or reveal themselves to you. And and would you agree that a lot of the clients that you work with, that's a common block, is this overthinking?
Yes. It's one of the most common things, yes, is they'll have an idea, but they're like, I don't know what I should charge for it. I don't know if it should be a program or this or that. I'm like, just share the words. The
Yeah.
name that came through, just post the words and then do like a sneaky little like devil emoji. People be like, what's this? And in your mind, you're like, I don't know yet. But you're at least getting it out there. Like there's some kind of action
Right.
because
Yeah.
it gets the momentum building.
Yes, that's for sure an area that Kim and I can work on. We're like, oh, let's figure it
Hmm.
out.
Yeah,
We get the ideas and we're like,
100%.
we're gonna unravel it and
Yeah.
figure it all out. And so I love the conversation because it's helpful for Kim and I, in addition to anyone else who's listening.
Absolutely. Because, yeah, like Veronica and I can get tripped on what are we going to name it? What does it want to be called? We can get tripped up on that. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. And so would you say that your way of taking action, Cassie, is always kind of like doing something like on social media kind of thing, like either a video, like a reel or words or something like that? Is that what it looks like? See, I'm
I
thinking
would say
about it.
most of the time. Yeah, I think most
Yeah.
of the time it is social media. Sometimes it'll be an email. Sometimes I actually won't do it publicly, but I'll go, like maybe I'll go into Voxer with my team or something, be like, "Ooh, this idea just dropped in. Like, what comes up for you?" or something like that. Like sometimes I'll do that first behind the scenes, but I always do something somewhere.
So it's always, would you say, it's some way of getting it out there, what, as opposed to just writing
Out
your
of me.
notes down in a
Yeah.
journal? Oh, so writing
Yeah,
it
it's got to
down in
be
a
out of
journal is
me.
not, gotcha.
If I put something in a journal, I will never see it again.
Yeah,
I'm not
same.
somebody who goes
Yeah,
through and like reviews it. Like I'll write it down. And I have lots of journals that I've written in over the years. I don't know what's in them because I don't go through them again. It's more journaling for me is more I just have to clear my head. I just have to get stuff out. But
right,
if I want to actually take action on something, it has to go outside of the journal because I won't do it if it's in there.
right. So kind of like being witnessed by others,
Yes.
like
Yes,
voicing it
exactly.
some way to others. Gotcha. I like that. Thanks.
Love that. Oh, that's amazing. Cassie, is there anything else when you think about your journey and you think about yourself starting out, when you think about clients that are just starting out, is there anything else that you would share from, again, from that inner perspective of mindset, of energetics, of emotional intelligence or mastery that you think is really key for folks to really contemplate on?
I think the biggest thing, I don't know if confidence is the right word because that just sounds kind of vague and boring, but like the confidence to really just be yourself. Because one of the biggest mistakes I made at the very beginning of my coaching career was being what I call the vanilla Cassie, like the vanilla version of me. I painted myself out to be this person that I thought I needed to be. So I toned myself down. I didn't
Mm,
swear. I didn't do all the things that I would normally do. I didn't do any of those things because I didn't think I could. But then once I finally got sick of that and I started to just be me, my business just took off. And so in doing that, it seems like it's an easy thing, like just be yourself, but it actually can be difficult for some people because when you're being yourself, some people won't like that. And they'll tell you how much they don't like that. And they'll tell you about how you're wrong and how you're this and how you're that. And it can be really easy to just kind of falter under that and be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just tone it down. Maybe not say those words anymore. Maybe do this. Maybe do it like that, like they're suggesting. But anytime you try to fit yourself into this box and you lose that confidence in just how great you are the way you are, it's just going to mess up your entire business. And it's boring for you and it's way more work for you. It's way more work to be a vanilla version of you than to just be all of who you really are. So I would just say like really owning you, everything about you, your quirks, your beliefs, your standards, the way you look, the way you speak, the way like all of that, like just owning it.
Love that so much. And that can be the hardest thing to do for so many of us. So,
Yep. But the
yeah.
most important.
Yes, exactly.
mhm,
I love it.
yeah.
Oh,
I
well,
always
thank
say,
you.
you know what? Yeah, I always say, you know what? You have to be willing to be judged,
Mm,
Yes. You'll be judged
right?
anyway. You'll be judged whether you're
Exactly.
being a fake version of yourself or the full version of yourself. So you might as well
Exactly.
keep it easy and just
What?
be you.
Exactly.
See, we're like beyond honored that you're here with us today and that you're willing to have this conversation. So helpful to so many people to see your success. But again, the success on the outside, but really everything you've navigated internally, which is really the true inspiring component of all of it. So thank you for being you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your persistence. Thank you for your courage and your confidence. And thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for your
much. It's been an
heart.
honor.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Mm,
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Until
awesome.
next time.